Analyze an argument. The Analyze an Argument section of the test requires you to critique an argument and discuss the logical soundness of it. You're given an expressed point of view that contains a conclusion and supporting evidence. You are not required to agree or disagree with it. You have 30 minutes to plan and write your critique. Always read the argument from a critical point of view. You should be on the lookout for assumptions. Always keep in mind that you aren't being asked to agree or disagree with the author's position or conclusion. You're being asked to analyze the chain of reasoning used in this argument. Know going in that every argument presented for the argument essay will be flawed. Because the Analyze an Argument section requires you to critique an argument and discuss how logically sound it is, let's briefly review the basics of logic. Most agreement questions hinge, either directly or indirectly, on determining the conclusions of the argument. The conclusion is the main idea of the argument. It is what the writer tries to persuade the reader to believe. As you would expect, most conclusions will come at the end of the argument. Occasionally, it can be found at the beginning of an argument, but rarely will it come in the middle. Writers use certain words to indicate that the conclusion is about to be stated. Here's a list of the most common conclusion indicators. Hence, therefore, so, accordingly, thus, consequently, it follows that, it shows that, we can conclude that, implies, as a result, and means that. These conclusion flags are very helpful, but you must use them cautiously because many of these words have other functions. When determining the conclusion's scope, be careful not to read any more or less into it than the author states. Certain words limit the scope of a statement. The following words are called quantifiers. Pay close attention to them. All, except, likely, some, most, many, only, could, no, never, always, everywhere, probably, must, alone. Here's an example. Whether the world is Euclidean or non-Euclidean, it is an open question. However, if a star's position is predicted based on non-Euclidean geometry, then when a telescope is pointed to where the star should be, it will be there. Whereas if the star's position is predicted based on Euclidean geometry, when a telescope is pointed to where the star should be, it won't be there. This strongly indicates that the world is probably non-Euclidean. Although the opening of the passage states that we don't know whether the world is non-Euclidean, the author goes on to give evidence that it is non-Euclidean. The author doesn't say that the world is non-Euclidean, just that the evidence strongly indicates that it is. In the last sentence, the word probably properly limits the scope of the main idea that the world is most likely non-Euclidean, but can't be stated so definitively. An important thing you'll need to look out for on the Analyze an Argument section are logical fallacies. Fallacies in an argument are elements of faulty reasoning that weaken the argument and may even make it invalid. Finding these are what will really allow you to dissect an argument. Let's look at a few different types. Contradiction. A contradiction is committed when two opposing statements are simultaneously asserted. For example, saying, "It is raining and it is not raining." Typically, however, the writer obscures the contradiction to the point that the argument can be quite compelling. Take, for instance, the following argument. We cannot know anything because we intuitively realize that our thoughts are unreliable. This argument has an air of reasonableness to it, but intuitively realize means to know. Thus, the writer is, in essence, saying that we know that we don't know anything. This is self-contradictory. Now that we've reviewed the basics, let's discuss how to formulate your essay. Your first task is to understand the argument. You cannot effectively analyze the argument until you completely understand it. Keep in mind that you have a short amount of time, so be concise but accurate in your breakdown of the argument. Here's what you'll want to identify immediately. The conclusion. What premises does the author offer to support the conclusion? What fallacies or flaws do you recognize in the argument? What assumptions are made in the argument? What does the argument fail to address? What necessary evidence is omitted from the argument? After you have identified these factors, you'll want to develop your thesis. Your thesis statement will set up your entire essay by letting the reader know what direction your critique will take. It will also provide you with a blueprint by which you can organize your essay. Here's an easy formula to set up your thesis for an analyze and argument essay. The argument that blank creates several problems because it assumes that blank. It fails to address blank, and it omits the important evidence that blank. Once you have formulated a thesis, you'll want to organize the information that you will present in your essay. You'll want to mirror the structure of your thesis and the structure of the essay. So the topic sentences for your body paragraph should look like this. Body paragraph 1, the argument assumes that blank. Paragraph 2, the argument does not address blank. And paragraph 3, the argument omits important evidence that blank. Actually writing your essay should not be difficult once you have planned out your outline.